is your Classic Metal Show right here on the ClassicMetalShow.com. That was Firewind, brand new stuff from the self-titled new release, also Firewind. That one was called Rising Fire, and up from the ashes right now, rising from the fire once again, is the legendary guitarist himself, the monster player of Firewind and about a dozen other bands that you've heard and love here on the Classic Metal Show, Mr. Gus G. Gus, how are you, sir?
Oh, wow. Thank you. Thank you for the amazing, spectacular intro. I'm fine. How are you?
Good. Well, Gus, I have to say, man, you are one of the favorites here on the show, not only for Firewind, but because we play pretty much every band that you've ever played in, whether it was Dream Evil or your solo stuff or Ozzy. I mean, seems like every fourth or fifth song we come across and play is a Gus G song. So,
and that's why I was wondering why all these royalties are coming in from America lately. That's what it is.
Yep,
thank you for the support, man. Thanks.
That quarter you get every month is from us.
Oh, man. Well, thank you.
Sure. Well, Gus, it's always exciting when there's new Firewind. And it seems like, as a regular question in any Firewind interview from album to album, it always starts with new album, new vocalist. And,
yep.
Once again, you have a new vocalist. So why don't we start there? Talk a little bit about why Henning left and why and how Herbie came into the band.
Yeah, sure. Well, it's not like I want to change the singers every time, but unfortunately that seems to be the case with us a lot the last few years. Anyways, it was before something like that happens, there's a series of things that pile up, obviously.
Sure.
It's not like it's not a decision that somebody takes overnight, like, okay, this is going to change. But, there were some things that, we needed to sort out. I think Henning had a small health issue as well, that he needed to, take care of himself. He wasn't sure if he could continue touring at this level. And,
mm-hmm.
I expressed I expressed to the band that basically I wanted to, start touring even more.
Okay.
And, so, that's when a lot of things started, like, we started having all these discussions, I knew that Bob didn't want to tour as much anymore. He basically hated airplanes and airports, so he just
right.
he wanted to build a studio back home. And with Henning, like I said, he had a little bit of a health issue going on, and so he was not sure. Anyways, with all these things coming into play, there was a delay with finalizing the album. So at some point, I sort of had to call the shots and be like, okay, well, this either is not going to go much forward pretty much, or I need to do what's necessary to do and to continue the band one way or another. And it just came down to this, man. It's like I wasn't ready to give it up, and
sure.
I just had to find a new singer and basically start over again. As a 4-piece, so it's like a reintroduction of the band, if you like, this time. So
sure.
It was a pretty major lineup change.
Yeah, it was, and at the same time, it adds new dimension. Herbie's voice has a very different quality than I think anybody that has been in Firewind has had before. He's got a much more, I don't want to say growly, because that's not the right term, but he's got like a grit to his voice where you've had primarily clean singers for most of the other Firewind records.
Yeah, probably with the exception of the first two, where I think Herbie sort of resembles of Stephen Frederick on the first two records. Okay. And that's what I really loved about his voice right away. Like he reminded me of Stephen Frederick a lot. Of course, he has his own style. I'm not saying he's a copycat of Stephen, but it was like in that style, I was like, wow, this was like one of my favorite eras of the band, the first two records.
Sure.
And I was like, wow, this would be really, really cool to have a guy like this. And I knew he could sing the back catalog great. He could sing all the other stuff that, the other guys have done. And yeah, I think I definitely think he's probably one of the best singers that this band has ever had. And I think he definitely brings new things to the table. There's a little bit of that resemblance of the old, but also brings fresh things to the table that could take us to the next level.
Sure. And there are a lot of elements on Firewind, the new album, that are very, first, it seems like it's the first time you're trying things that you haven't done before. I'll point to the song like Overdrive, which has that real Sabbathy headless cross type of a feel to it, which is sort of new for you, for Firewind. How did that song come together, and was that you actively reaching out, trying to grow as a guitar player or as a band?
No, I mean, first of all, you're spot on about the vibe of the song. It's totally influenced from stuff like Headless Cross or Holy Diver, that kind of vibe. But it was just one of those ideas that I had, and it was one of those riffs. I knew right away it's different. I knew it. I'm like, okay, this is something that if I add onto the album, it's going to be something that might make people go, oh, that's different.
Right.
But I thought, if it's done well, it would add another dimension to the track list, to the overall sound of the band. And I decided to go for it. I wanted to make this type of anthem, heavy metal anthem type of track. Yeah. So, I basically had the music for it, and I sent it to Herbie, and I said, what do you think of that? And he just sent me the vocal lines back like a day later. And I mean, it's basically the vocal line that you hear now, the same melody. And I'm like, wow, dude, this fits you like a glove. This is perfect, and I knew it was like something different, but equally cool. And it would have added a new cool thing to our sound palette.
Absolutely. Now, Gus, I know 1,000,001 guitar players, and every single one of you guys has a notebook or a hard drive or a phone or something that is full of riffs that you do all over the place, whether you're on a plane, in a bus, in a room, whatever. It seems like you guys always have this collection of riffs. For you, go ahead.
No, so I have one of those as well. Yeah, I
have. Well, how do you make the differential, especially you, who does many different projects? How do you decide, well, I'm going to hold this for Firewind, or I'm going to hold this for a solo record, or I'm going to bring this to the table when I play on somebody else's record?
Yeah, you're right about that. It's always a tough call because, when you're playing heavy metal, primarily that's my style. It's not like I make jazz records or something. I make, primarily hard rock metal records. So yeah, some stuff, sometimes you have to make these calls like, okay, this should be there. To give you an example, I had this idea, the opening track, Welcome to the Empire. That's like a idea that I've had for 2 or 3 years now, at least, I think.
Okay.
At least 3 years. And it was originally intended to be an instrumental for one of my solo records. And it was just one of those ideas where I knew it was cool enough, but it was there was a lot of cool guitar work on it, and intricate arrangements and a cool build-up. But I felt it wasn't going anywhere as an instrumental, so that's when I finally thought, it was just laying there on my hard disk or something. And eventually, I thought, well, if we put vocals into this, if we try to put vocals, it could become a really kick-ass Firewind song. So, and that's what we did, And once the vocals came in, it became this, big epic track, and that's when the whole inspiration hit me again, and I wrote this ending melody to it, So that's when the whole song basically was completed. So sometimes you just have to wait a little bit and see, like step away from the material and then go back and listen to it maybe a couple of months later and be like, okay, maybe this is not going to work for this album. Maybe I should keep this for Firewind or whatever. Or maybe, I have riffs right now here that are sitting that I know I probably will not use on any of my albums, but maybe they're sitting there. Maybe I can give it to somebody else if they need, that will fit their style.
Sure. Do you remember them all? Because I'll tell you, we do the show here every week live, and I'll be honest, we do it on Saturday, and by Sunday, I don't remember what the hell I've said. So, I can't imagine how you can write something 3 years ago, and it might be 10 seconds of riff, but it's just something that, felt good for a moment. I don't know how you guys keep track of that stuff.
No, of course I don't remember. That's why I record all the time. This is my approach to writing. I just, when I have an idea and a riff, either I'll record it on my phone, or if I'm at home, and like this will be if I'm at a hotel. But if I'm at home, I'll just fire up the Pro Tools real quick, and I'll just open a session and just record the riff and leave it there. And maybe have some time. Maybe I'll do like a basic drum beat and then just leave it there. And sometimes some songs are easier to write than others. Sometimes a whole song can come to you like within 10-15 minutes.
Right.
And then there's songs that it takes 3 years to complete, just because you had that riff and then you are looking for the other part of the song to complete that might come like a year or two later or a few months later. So of course I cannot remember it all, but that's why I keep a folder of all these riffs and unused ideas. And eventually, that I have to say, this also helps me pick a direction every time I start up an album. Like I'll go in that folder and be like, okay, so what do we have here? And like listen through all those riffs again and be like, oh, this is pretty cool. I did this, last New Year's Eve or something, and I forgot about it. But this, maybe I can work on this now, and that helps me write a lot of material. And as opposed to sort of struggling to finish a record like in 2 weeks. Okay, we got 2 weeks. Let's write 11 songs. I mean,
right.
I used to do that 15 years ago, but I can't do that anymore. It doesn't feel natural,
Sure. Is part of the reason that you've grown away from that the fact that you play in so many different things? Where you can't focus necessarily on one thing for an extended period of time, or for 2 weeks.
Well, I did this in my early 20s. Obviously, I was like in 4 bands at the same time, and when you're in your early 20s, your blood is boiling and you want instant recognition and you're impatient and all that. But I think around the time when I was 25, 26, I realized, well, I should focus in this band, and it's good to get all these experiences and write with other people and play with other people. That's very important. It's a school, but at the same time, you're like, okay, well, I got to focus in my band. Otherwise there's like nothing really going to happen with it. And, that's what I did back in 2006 when I focused on Firewind. And that's when things really started happening with this band. And we were able to go out and do like all these world tours. And, I mean, throughout my career, I've been getting calls from bands, to join the whole time. But, I mean, getting a call from Ozzy is not something you say no to,
Sure.
So of course, that changes everything in your life. But getting out of that, of course, I did what I did before. I went back to my own band.
Right. Do you? I'm curious now that you've had time to look back at the time with Ozzy, and certainly you made a great record with Ozzy, and obviously it took your personal profile way, way higher, to another level. But now that you've had time to look back at it, do you wish you hadn't done it? Because that's a silly question, but do you feel like maybe it did kind of derail Firewind's career a little bit? Because Firewind, as I remember it in 2008-9, was a band that was very clearly on the rise, and then you were in Ozzy, and it stopped for a while, and it almost feels like you're having to almost rebuild a little bit, and you've had to been for the last few years.
Yeah. I think I definitely don't think the Ozzy gig is to blame for that. I mean, Did we miss on a couple of cool tour opportunities? Yeah, we did back then. But I was on that massive world tour with him, and honestly, in respect, like it, looking at the big picture, it opened other doors for us that we were able to go out and do other things later on.
Sure.
So. No, I don't think so. Like, taking a year and a half, off from touring, I don't think that's what killed the momentum. I think the fact that, the singer left after we did 2 albums that didn't really, I think they were like, we kind of like did it under pressure. We were like caught in that kind of thing, album tour. And,
right.
So I think we did 2 albums that didn't really resonate as much. They had really cool moments, but they were not like our best efforts. And then the singer left, and then that really hurt the band, I think.
Sure.
So after that, as you know, the band went on hiatus for 4 years. Mm-hmm. And, looking back at that, I mean, while it was something that I really needed to do to figure it all out, that's why I went on a solo path. I mean, I think that was a major mistake, that the fact that we were not consistent those 5 years, I think that's where we lost a lot of ground as a band. Because you know how it is, like, the music scene moves very fast. People forget really easily. Sure. So, when we did the Immortals record like 3 years ago, it almost started like as an experiment. We're like, okay, let's do this with a new singer. And then we felt we had a really strong record. We're like, well, let's see if anybody still cares out there, if there's still a fan base left. But, to our surprise, there was. Sure. And we were able to go out on, like, a 2-year tour, and things were great again. And then again, they weren't.
Yeah, right. Well, for you personally, though, it cannot suck to be listed in that same list with Zach and Randy Rhoads and Jakey Lee. I mean, that's an elite group of players that your name is in.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've like I said before, it has only done great things for us. There were other factors that sort of stopped Firewind, from the rise. Definitely not the Ozzy gig. If anything, that definitely helped the situation. Sure,
definitely. Well, with Firewind, and you have this great new record simply called Firewind, or Release. I guess there are no records anymore, but the one thing that really jumps out at me from every other Firewind release is how big and great the sound is. Tobias Lindell worked with you guys on this, and man, what a great sound he captured. It's just big.
He did, yeah. He gave us a really big, fat mix, and I love it. That's the way this album should have sounded like, and I think he's responsible for this sort of fresh sound that we have right now, so it's really cool.
Sure. What the one song that really stood out to me is the song that we opened with, because it's just fast and furious, and it's some of your best guitar work, the song Rising Fire. Talk a little bit about that song, Gus, because, man, what an ass kicker that one is.
Oh, cool. Thank you. Yeah. I mean, it's I thought it was originally scheduled to be the second single, but then I changed my mind on the way, because I thought, well, this could be the opening single, the first track we go out with, because first of all, it's heavy as fuck, it's groovy, it's it has a big chorus, a lot of melody, and it's a good way. It's a short song, like under 3.5 minutes, right. So it really it leaves you wanting more, and it's a headbanger, So I mean, lyrically, it's a song about overcoming difficulties, basically, and sort of like rising through all that and moving on. So yeah, it's a song of positivity, that and it's a what I call a high octane type of heavy metal track.
Absolutely. Well, we certainly need positivity right now. Obviously, we're all kind of locked at home, just kind of waiting for things to clear. And obviously, as of yesterday, you guys have a lot more time to sit home. Can you even look forward to what's next, or do you just have to kind of sit back and wait and see how things play out before making any future plans?
Yeah, I think that's the way to do this now. We have to wait and see. In the beginning, I panicked a little bit. I'm like, oh, well, this whole year is done, probably not going to tour, and who knows what happens next year. But, I mean, there's not much you can do. It's not like it's affecting only our band. It's affecting the whole music industry. So, safety first. I mean, we have to, it's for us, in order for us to do a world tour or any gigs, basically, the world needs to be safe before anybody can really go out there and have another public gathering. So so that's where we're at now, man. I'm just sort of like laying low, waiting to see, just enjoying at the moment, talking to people about the new record. And then I think when it's a safe place again out there, we will go out there and promote this record and play those new songs.
Sure. Do you think it'll change how you interact with fans, or your willingness to get on planes, or any of that stuff, or do you think it'll just go back to normal?
No, I think I don't. I've always to me, this was always like my life. That's how I did it. I enjoyed traveling, and I enjoyed sometimes the conditions are scary,
Right.
But
sure.
I don't think anybody will get on a plane and go anywhere unless this thing is really gone. So yeah, so I think we will do this again when it's safe again. But once it is safe and the virus is gone, I think to me it's not going to change the way I feel about going in a plane or in another country. Yeah,
that makes sense. Well, for now, Gus, what people should do is listen to the new Firewind release. It's released what, May 15th? Is that right?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, May 15th.
May 15th. It is a killer record. If you like metal, there's no way you cannot like this release. It is fantastic. It is Firewind. It's self-titled. And Gus, why don't you pick a closing track from the album and maybe tell us a quick story about it to wrap up the interview?
Okay. Maybe listen to, I don't know. So, yeah, let's listen to the opening track, Welcome to the Empire. That's one of my favorite tracks on the record. And, yeah, I think it's a record that kind of like sums up all the dynamics of this album, because it has like this acoustic intro and builds up into this, heavy thing, almost thrashy thing, and then a big chorus. So yeah, like I said, it's a really cool. Guitar-wise, it's one of the really cool moments on the record. So it's one of my favorites. What can I say? Yeah. So let's listen to that.
All right. Well, let's check it out now. It is Welcome to the Empire. It is Firewind right here on your Classic Metal Show.